This is the Fantasy Football Game Plan, where we talk about fantasy football and the NFL. Usually we go worst to first, so I kind of thought it'd be fun to do that again. And my worst for this division is the Browns. And they sure made a mess this offseason with the whole Deshaun Watson thing.
Why does everyone want to play for the Browns? Like the last 3 years, there's been like a cohort of people just big names going to the Browns. They last a season and then they leave. It's just like Cleveland's not that good. Like
No.
the city itself is not that. Like this is what I mean. Like it's like I don't know what the draw is. Their head coaches change like every other year, and there's really no consistency in that program. But it just seems to get big names like Watson just coming in and then Baker peeling out. And Baker's not even having a job now.
So, well, he's still there. So, that's the thing. Yeah, they have new ownership and new head coaches all the time and new quarterbacks all the time. And so now they have another new quarterback. But Baker Mayfield is still on the roster. They picked up his fifth-year option. So it's a Jimmy G situation.
But then they have Jacoby Brissett too.
They have all kinds of guys that they brought in because they don't want Baker Mayfield anymore, and he has asked to be traded. The problem is that they are on the hook for a bunch of money and nobody's trading to get him. And Deshaun Watson probably will be suspended for being a creep for 4 to 6 games right out of the gate. So they'll have somebody else playing. That division's very tough. I mean, basically their season's already over.
Well, they did lose a couple wide receivers this year too, but and they did gain one from Dallas, which is Cooper. So whoever's throwing Cooper the ball, maybe hopefully it works out for you in fantasy.
I don't know. So I mean, I don't want Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson for my fantasy quarterback. So they've got good running backs. Would you want some of their running backs?
Definitely want it. Like Chubb's been top of the league for many years, and he is the bell cow. Whatever happens at the quarterback position, their game is run with their backup Kareem Hunt as well too. Like those guys put up multiple yards. So this is once again one of those teams where you need to kind of have both of these guys, but one or the other will do you just well too. So if you're going to pick something from Cleveland that's most reliable for the last 2 seasons, it's the running back room.
Well, and I'm wondering about D'Ernest Johnston because D'Ernest Johnson was on our he was on our pickup list a lot last season on the waiver wire. And I don't know if they'll re-sign Hunt because Johnson is good and they've got him cheap. This will be
on the roster, so he's unless something happens between now and preseason, but he's still on the roster. But you're right, like Johnson is someone to keep an eye out, especially on those, because if Korean goes somewhere else, he's such a big name that he'll draw picks.
Yeah,
but Johnson might just slip through the radar. So if you can pick him up in the later round, he might be your sleeper of the year.
Yep, could be, or a guy in Dynasty. If you hang on to him next year, he could be really valuable if you get him cheap this year.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at receivers, you already talked about Amari Cooper, so he's obviously the number one guy. I know they have Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, he kind of broke out a little bit last year, but he was breaking out with Baker Mayfield. So what does the quarterback room look like? And you know what I mean? Like he was catching those long, deep threats, and he's a big body type of receiver.
Yeah.
So, he's doing well, but who's throwing the ball and what's going on if they're going to be running the ball quite a bit too. So, and Deshaun Watson likes to run too. So he's almost has that like those legs on him as well too. It's an interesting. I don't know what to say about this team and the wide receivers, considering their quarterback is not solidified at this time.
Yeah, they have Rashad Higgins, who's not a bad player either. Maybe their confidence in him is why they felt like they didn't need to add too many more pieces. at receiver, but I'm with you. I need to see what it looks like. We started with these guys because they're the bottom of the league. They've got David Njoku for a tight end.
Yep.
He's okay.
Yeah. And their defense was supposed to be good, so let's see what happens again this year too. Right, their front four is pretty dominant. So
yeah,
but last year they kind of they're up there, and this year looks like they've just added some more depth. They didn't really lose anybody, so it'll be interesting what the Browns do as a defensive squad.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some good football teams. How about we go to the Steelers next?
Oh yeah. Well, no more Ben.
Yeah, no more Ben.
That's the big news. He was kind of like a trusty fantasy guy for years. Even in his even up to last season, he can still get you fantasy points, at least 20 in most leagues. But now they have Mitch Trubisky on his fourth team, whatever, how many teams he's been on in 5 years. And they just picked up a new guy on the draft day, first round. Kenny Pickett, something like that. So interesting.
Yeah.
And they're saying he could be number one. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, this is why I have them second to worst in the division, because when you have an unclear quarterback situation, as two of these teams in this division do, it's hard to predict what they're going to look like. They've got a great running back that everybody wants for Najee Harris.
I got him last year, second round on the bottom of the ladder. Pretty happy to have him. He was catching. He was the bell cow. I said that now twice in this episode.
Yeah.
But wow,
yeah,
what a great athlete he is, and tough.
He's one of the few running backs. You know how I always say, well, if you get one, you got to get the other, because you got to handcuff. Najee Harris, you don't need to get anybody else. If you have him, he's going to get the ball all the time. They're going to run him ragged. They're going to wear him out. They're not concerned particularly about saving him or his health or any of that stuff. They are just going to work him to death. And so it's great for fantasy. And no need to worry about getting Benny Snell. I mean, if you want to get the handcuff, fine, but you don't need it.
Yeah.
And then with the receivers for this team, they always have pretty good receivers. They lost Washington, but he was like third on their depth chart anyways, right behind Deontay Johnson.
Hit and miss. Ben loved him, but he would catch and drop just as many as he would catch.
Yep.
Ben loved Washington, but it was weird. He always kind of threw him the ball, but he's gone now. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, Deontay Johnson catches a lot of balls and drops a lot of balls, and he's their number one guy. And it's kind of funny because Claypool is so talented and so huge, plus he's from right around the corner from here. So, we love that. But it's surprising to me that Johnson's been the top receiver for this team. And I'm wondering if that doesn't change this year and maybe Claypool takes a step up. They also drafted a guy, George Pickens, that people are really high on. And from what we've seen of the Steelers, unlike the Patriots, the Steelers seem to be really good at drafting receivers. And they do it consistently and they develop them. And I don't know if they've got an eye for it. And so I think this Pickens guy is somebody to keep your eye on going forward. But, I mean, who do you like better, Claypool or Deontay Johnson?
Who's throwing them the ball? Ben Roethlisberger? Then I would say Johnson. But it's up there. Can Trubisky throw farther than a check down to Harris? Probably not. What can this Kenny Pickett do? I'm sorry, I don't watch college football every single Saturday. I don't know. So it's tough. I think just to be safe, pick up the tight end in like a 9th round, like that Pat Tariq guy. He was 88. He was catching everything last year. So, it's weird. I don't know what to say about this team. I would really have to see where my draft picks are going. But if years pass, Johnson might be your guy, but Claypool is also right up there as a number one receiver. So I don't know. And like what do we do now with Cleveland and these guys? Like, it's just who's their quarterback? Maybe these are answers later on in the year that we just know, like closer to draft day. Oh, because I wanted to make one more point about Pittsburgh, which is really interesting. It was the tight end position. Sorry.
Pat Freiermuth?
No. Cameron Hayward's brother got drafted.
Okay.
Connor Hayward. So just another big body tight end. So they might be running the ball quite a bit. And he has some gorgeous hands supposedly too. And what better yet to have a brother on the other side of the ball with you playing. So just to point that out, Connor Hayward.
Right.
Cameron Hayward's younger brother.
Right. A brother from the same mother. You want to move on to Baltimore?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Baltimore's got Lamar Jackson, who's always a great fantasy QB, although he gets sick a lot from COVID and other things, stomach flu, and he gets weird things. But he's a good player and uses his feet a lot, which is great for fantasy. I liked his backup, Tyler Huntley, last year. I thought he was sort of better at throwing the ball than even Lamar was. But, I mean, maybe that's just me. But so Lamar will be a top guy. And then both these running backs last year got hurt.
They were calling people from the streets, but good people from the streets to come play running back for them. Like Dobbins and Edwards. Great running backs. I don't know what to say about them. If they could stay healthy, they're both going to do really well. Like, they run between tackles very well. They run on the outside very well. It's a running back by committee. It sounds like most teams are doing this now. They're grabbing two very similar guys to carry the ball, and it really makes it a little bit challenging to say who's going to start each week and who's going to get the most possessions each week.
Yeah, well, we're back to, you kind of want both of them. So, I mean, especially if one gets hurt, then the other's value goes through the roof. So, I think both these guys are worth looking at. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. And then the receiving situation got really interesting because they traded Marquise Brown to the Cardinals.
Hollywood's gone. Get out of here, bud. He was there for what, 2 years, 3 years, maybe?
Yeah, and he was
too big for Baltimore, I guess.
He was a decent player. So, I mean, Rashad Bateman is the guy you would think will be filling in that number one receiver role. We didn't see a lot from him last year, but I guess they're confident in what he can do. And
there's also, I was kind of toying with last year about that Duvernay guy. Duvernay guy. Yeah. He was seeing some things, but it's weird that you remove Hollywood Brown when he was like really only person he was really catching the ball, making a lot of runs. But they picked up a ton of receivers in draft. Like, I'm seeing like 6 receivers that they picked up on drafting. So what? I think maybe this is a team that you really watch from week 1 and 2 to see if any of these like unknown rookies kind of like make it into the lineup, right? Because Bateman is good. He was like their number 1 pick last year, I believe, but he really didn't do much.
Yeah. Well, they just kept throwing the ball to Mark Andrews, the tight end. He was the top tight end last year.
Well, that's like, it's almost like the Pittsburgh thing is like the most reliable position on this team is probably the tight end if you wanted something solid, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's taken the place of Kelsey maybe for the top tight end this year. He'll go ahead of Kelsey in a lot of situations, and I think he's far ahead of Kittle now. So
yeah, well, like we haven't really seen Lamar do much other than run the ball. So, like he has had some like passes that have gone, correctly, but he's not really a passing quarterback. And like you said at the beginning of talking about Baltimore, his backup Tyler Huntley was a better pass, in the pocket passer.
Yeah.
Than Lamar. But then Lamar is like MVP, multiple times in conversation and can change games and just is like a phenomenal athlete, but if he goes down or if he has a bad game or he has to take a shit, whatever, like, who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews did win me a fantasy championship 2 years ago. So when they're on, they are clicking. They're great, but we haven't seen them match that level of output. As a tandem. I mean, Andrews was great last year even without Lamar. So that's his value is huge because it doesn't seem to matter who the quarterback is there. Andrews is going to get the ball. Their offense seems to be run, throw to the tight end.
Yeah, and maybe it's the same. Maybe it's the same way too.
Yeah, and they did draft O-line this year. They draft a good tackle, really good tackle, monster of a guy. It's like 340 pounds or something like that. And everybody's really high on him. So they had a need there and they addressed it in the draft. So they're good to go, I think.
I think they picked up a center as well too.
Great. So they're a team to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
You want to move on to the best team in this division?
Which is so funny that we're saying they're the best team. But yes, they have improved over many years. The Cincinnati Bengals are rounding it up.
Have they ever? Super Bowl. I mean, they could have won it if the referees were consistent throughout the game, and they weren't. But, we don't need to go over that again. But the Bengals were right there as the best team in the league. And Joe Burrow, I would love to have him as my fantasy quarterback. What about you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, he's one of the top quarterbacks. Hopefully you can get a 1-2 punch with any of his wide receivers that he can throw to. So definitely a pickup.
Yeah, receiving wise.
One of the top 4 quarterbacks in fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, Jamar Chase, top 3 guy. He could be the best overall this year. I don't know. I know Cooper Kupp was first last year, but I mean, you couldn't go wrong if you had Jamar Chase. If you draft him in the first round, you'd be fine.
Yeah, just their starting lineup too. Like their 3 receivers that they have with Chase, Higgins, and also Boyd.
Yeah,
like it's a triple threat. They probably have one of the best receiving corps in the NFL, starting with no injuries this year by far.
Yeah,
so, and you put a quarterback like Joe Burrow there, and it's just a success. And then there's this guy named Mixon. I'm always on this nay side of Mixon, and I'll still be on the nay side of Mixon. I won't pick him ever in my top 10, whatever things I do. But what I will go after is that backup of his, which is
Pirine.
Yeah, that guy. Like, I'm just not a fan of Mixon. I'm sorry, that's just something I'm going to live with. I probably will never draft him. But Pirine, to me, is a solid number 3 backup on your bench to have there in your flex position. I think the guy is solid and is going to do amazing.
Okay, and you don't like the running back Joe Mixon because why?
Just don't like him. Just never really liked him.
Okay, so it's not that you don't think that it's not that you don't think that he's a good fantasy player or that he's worth having on your team. You just don't like him, so you wouldn't draft him because of a personal bias.
I just have never thought that he has done outstanding well for a team. Yeah, I don't know. Just don't like him.
Okay, I do like him because he has done remarkably well for a team with a garbage offensive line. And their offensive line has been garbage for a long time. And he's always consistently put up good fantasy numbers. And this offseason, the Bengals actually addressed their problems at O-line. And I think Mixon's going to be a monster next year. Nothing. Okay. That's just, I'm just pointing that out there. Like, he's set up to succeed more than ever before. They cannot stack the box against him now because, as you said, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase is arguably the best receiving core in the league, and great quarterback. So I really think that teams are going to be off balance when it comes to trying to figure out what the Bengals are going to do on each play. They did get rid of their tight end Uzama, but they have a guy named Hayden Hurst on their team. He should be okay. I don't think he's always sort of an okay tight end. He's not too bad of a player, but they don't really feature the tight end a lot in that offense. There's a lot of competition there.
A lot of people want the ball, that's for sure. But
yeah.
That they addressed their offensive line, because that was my big joke last year about them picking up Chase, was that they didn't pick up Penny Swell, who would have helped them a lot last year. But they did pick up some old cats to do the job with the Bengals and to do up front. Joe Mixon, Perron, yes, they're going to be more productive this year, guaranteed. This team is going to be a threat. Yeah. Where I think where the team is going to be more of a threat is on the defensive front. So I think this is going to be one of the top defenses that you should pick up. I believe that their defense is probably also just as strong as their offense this year. This team is a team to reckon with. The only problem is they are playing in the AFC. And there's a lot of good teams in the AFC. So they may be the best of the North, but we still have other places to go to as we talk about the AFC. And it's just going to be an interesting, fun division conference actually to watch.
Okay. So next time then we'll look at the AFC South, I guess.
Yeah, let's go to the South.
All right. So next time we'll look at the AFC South, the Titans, the Texans, the Colts, Jags. Okay. Thanks for watching the Fantasy Football Game Plan podcast. Need coaching on your lineup? Drop us a line and we'll discuss your dilemma.